Maybe don't know. Maybe don't.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build. 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 This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 106 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I am now here in Red River Gorge, aka the Amazonian jungle. It's a little bit ridiculous here. And maybe living in Landers made me soft because conditions are so damn good there most of the time. Maybe that's the case, but I do know for a fact that the humidity that's happening here right now, number one, sucks for rock climbing. Number two, makes me really, really grumpy. Not stoked on it. But we're gonna try to stick it out. We're gonna be here hopefully till Thanksgiving if the weather cooperates. I did rebuild a little old truck camper to bring with us. Make the trip a little nicer, but these conditions are probably the absolute worst conditions for a truck camper, especially a pop-up truck camper. So this is sort of trial by fire or trial by rain and humidity, as the case may be. It's been super busy. I've been behind. No excuses. It's just the facts. Core Strength for Climbers did come out. Movement Skills for Climbers is now out. So if you haven't picked up those two ebooks, you should go to powercompanyclimbing.com/ebook and do that. Check those out. I'm going to get right into this interview today because I think it's a really, really important one. And it's with Boulder-based strength trainer Joslynn Corredor. And I first encountered Joss a couple of years ago, I guess. I sent a client of mine to get a functional movement screen and some advice on strength training from Joss, and she was there, and I really value that in-person feedback, especially from someone as experienced and who had great recommendations like Joslynn did. But I didn't really know her very well I didn't know her at all, actually, until this interview happened at OR this past summer in Denver. And I went into this not really knowing what to expect because it's a topic that could go a lot of different ways. And I didn't really know what to expect. And I think I'm just going to let you guys listen. But the one word that really stands out in my head after listening back to this conversation and that I walked away from this conversation with that day was courage.
Maybe don't know. Maybe don't.
I go, why are you sorry? And she's like, you have BRCA1. Excuse me, what does that mean? And she's like, you have a genetic mutation. You're at higher risk for cancer now.
Power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build.
First off, how do you pronounce your last name?
Actually, it's Corredor.
Corredor.
Yeah.
Okay. I figured there were rolled R's or something in there somewhere.
But, I mean, everyone's like, oh, corridor, like a hallway. And I'm like, yeah, sure. That's not actually. So it actually means runner in Spanish.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I
didn't know
always
that.
dreamed that it'd be cool to be like, because I ran in college and
Right.
since I was little, I thought it'd be cool, like if I had, because you have your name tags and it's always your last name. I was like, oh, that'd be so cool if I was running in and it said Corredor and like I was running and you know, it'd say runner.
Yeah. And then
finishing first. Just kidding.
And then you found climbing and everybody's saying, don't run to be better at climbing.
Oh, yeah.
So,
No. I mean, I still run, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. You kind of have to now.
Well, I tell people, I'm like, it's different for me because I've done it since I was little.
Right.
You know, like, I'm like, if you weren't ever a runner before, that's like
Yeah. And some
Like-
people just need it. They love it. It's their
Yeah.
It's their alone time, their
Yep,
recharge
an outlet.
time, you know, so they should totally do it.
Yeah, it's funny. When I first started climbing, I had to still run because I was like, climbing is not a workout.
Right.
Like I'd still go like do intervals or
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
And then I actually got a knee issue, and so I just only started to climb,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine now. But yeah, when
Yeah.
I first started, I was like, "What? Climbing's not a workout."
That's so funny. So talk to me about how, like, becoming a strength trainer started. Why on earth would you want to become a strength trainer?
Well, yeah, skinny runner woman. So I don't really actually tell this story that often, but I think it's good for people to know. I actually had to go on a time trial when I was in college, so I didn't actually run all 4 years.
Right.
So I think there was 15, 20 girls on the team that had to do a time trial. And
this was
like,
to stay on the team?
to stay on the team.
Okay.
Yeah. And he didn't actually, I do really poorly with if people aren't just, and he didn't actually have everyone try out.
Right.
So, I was like, well, fine, if everyone has to try out. But moral of that story, try it out. I trained. I literally have never been in better shape. So I trained myself, and I went into being an athlete. You get your own facility.
Right.
I ran at Oregon State, and
That's a big running school.
yeah. And so I'd go in, I'd talk to the strength coaches. I was very interested in how, I would get better. I was like, I need to make this team or stay on the team.
Yeah.
And so I worked my ass off, and I lived in a house with 7 girls. None of the other girls had to try out, really.
Oh, they were all runners and didn't have to.
And so they were all confused too, because they were like, "What? You run like around the same pace as us?" But they were like, "But thank God we don't have to do it."
Right. Totally.
And I think it was also because I was struggling in school. Like, and people ask, should I do sports in college? And I'm like, if you're really good at school, do it.
Yeah.
I was asked to change my major multiple times, and I was
Right.
like, well, I know I'm not going to go pro, so I'm only doing this for like the community, really. So I trained to be on the team,
Right.
and through that learned to do it on my own. And then I ended up doing it on my own, basically. And I was like, wait, the fastest I've ever been, and I did it all on my own.
Right.
And I didn't, I had some teammates train with me sometimes, but I think, and I ended up missing it. I was the first one in when we did the time trial.
Yep.
And I trained all summer, and then I wanted to go home, which home is California. And I had been away for a while. And I asked my coach, we have a meeting before the time trial, and he's like, Joss, I think you're going to be the only one that makes the team. And I was like, what? Are you serious? And he goes, yeah, I haven't seen anyone work as hard as you've been training all summer. Like, you're going to easy breeze, make it, And I was like, okay, well, my reward is going home.
Yeah.
And he's like, whoa, I don't think you should go home. Like, you've worked so hard, you may get sick. And I was like, what? I'm not going to get sick going home. Of course I get sick.
Of
I
course.
get sick.
Yeah.
I got really sick. And I even was like, oh, shoot. Like, I don't know, but I've been working so hard. I'll make it. It'll be fine. I miss it by like 10 seconds.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Which I was like, okay. And I knew because they're yelling times as you're going around.
Yep.
And he was like, okay, he kneels. All the girls are already bawling.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you guys are all cut.
Oh, shit.
So
Jeez.
I ended up then having an identity, shift. And I would assume any athlete,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
even when they're injured, they're like, what am I doing? I've done this my whole life. I can't do this.
Yep.
But being told you're not allowed to be on the team, pretty much, getting kicked off. I was like, whoa, what do I do now? So I ended up becoming a trainer at the gym on campus, and still trying to train myself, but also learning to train other people.
At first, was there like a hope that you would
Oh, for
try
sure.
out for the
oh
team
my
again?
God. Yeah. Deep down, for sure. That
Yeah.
was like, I'm like, I'm going to become a trainer so I can,
Right.
be even better and then
Yeah.
get back on the team, and then I'll show him,
Did
know?
you ever try out again, or did you
No,
just go
because
deeper and deeper into training?
I got deeper and deeper. I became obsessed with training.
Yeah.
Just knowing and finding out how the body functions, and helping other people achieve their goals. I was like, oh my gosh, wait, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And I had an awesome mentor that he was an athletic trainer, and he was like always on my side for everything. And he was like, you know what, Jess, you be the coach that you needed, when you
Cool.
were, and I was like, okay, yeah. And he's like, you don't need to, you're still an athlete, and I
Right.
was like, okay, yeah. And
Well, that's one of the really interesting things for me about climbing.
yeah.
Is that most other sports, especially organized sports,
Mm-hmm.
once you become an adult and you're out of school, there aren't, like, people don't just go hang out and play softball
For sure,
at a
yeah.
really high level,
Mm-hmm.
So climbing allows you to do that. Like you're out there, instead of just meeting just for fun, there are a lot of people out there really pushing themselves
Oh, yeah.
and trying so hard to improve.
I think, and there's so many people that are athletes within climbing that they
Yeah.
didn't even know,
Right.
they like find it in themselves.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's why people become obsessed with training themselves too, or finding other trainers to get them to their area they want to be at,
Yeah.
Yeah. So this mentor, he ended up saying, I was like, well, I really liked those strength coaches. And he was like, well, Joss, if you want to be a strength coach, you got to lift,
Right.
like you got to seriously lift. None of the little like light dumbbell stuff. He's like, you got to actually lift. And I was like, oh, so if I go backwards 3 years, I actually dislocated my shoulder surfing from an impact injury. And I didn't really do anything about it because I had no idea.
Right.
I didn't really know what that meant. Like I totally, like it was out. I couldn't swim. I had to be like rescued in from
Yeah.
a lifeguard.
And like so many
And-
athletes, you're like, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh, I
It'll-
mean, I
it'll be
only,
fine.
at the time, I was still running.
Yep.
And so I was like, well, I don't need my arms. Like they're just going to be by my sides.
Yep.
So I did some PT, and I had actually still gotten an MRI, and the orthopedic handed me his card and was like, talk to me when you want to come back for surgery because you have a torn labrum. And I was like, what? No, I can just do PT. And I what I really hated was that he was like so confident in that I needed this.
Right.
And I just was so stubborn that I was like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm
Yeah.
going to do PT. And I went through PT, was fine, but I actually dislocated my arm every single time I went home to surf. Like every single time. So I didn't learn better.
You were
from
just
it.
born to be an athlete. That's what it
Just
is.
was like, or stubborn. I don't know. I think most
they're pretty
athletes are
much the
stubborn.
same.
It's true.
Yeah.
And well, I see it in all climbers. They tear their labrum, they tear a rotator cuff, and then
Yep.
they're like, "What? Well, I can just still climb. It's fine."
Yeah.
Until it's not fine.
Till it's not fine.
Exactly. And I get actually a lot of clients that have shoulder issues because
Yep.
I'm like, "Oh, I know shoulders," because I did so much PT and even ended up getting shoulder surgery
Right.
and did more PT. And I think a lot of people are either prone to injury or, they're genetically gifted and are not.
Right.
So, because there are a lot of climbers that they're like, well, I've never had a shoulder injury. And I'm like, yeah, that's just because you're lucky.
Yeah. That's
So, you got
Yet.
good genetics.
You haven't had a shoulder injury yet.
Well, I think some people never will, like they just won't. And some people they can do everything and they're still going to get injured.
Yeah, and so many people have torn labrums that
Oh, yeah.
don't even know.
Totally. Yeah.
You know?
I actually have one on my other shoulder now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I literally have done everything. And yet, I still have one. But
Does that one give you trouble?
I've had instances where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that one time that I was in the back of my head hoping that it wasn't a subluxation, but
Right.
it definitely was.
Right.
But I was like in denial. I was like, oh yeah, that happened. I would, because I know how to check myself for all of,
Sure.
all the things that an orthopedic would do. So I always do it to see if I have range of motion. And I always did. So I was like, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah, we've learned to compensate so much.
Oh yeah.
As climbers, as athletes in general.
Yeah.
When I had my shoulder surgery, when I first went into the doctor, just the general doc, she said, it's just tendonitis. There's way too much strength there. It's not torn.
Oh yeah.
And I'm
every
like,
time.
I need you to refer me to the orthopedic. And
Yeah.
I went to see him, and he said, no, it's just tendonitis. It's too strong.
Was
It's not
it
torn.
rotator or labrum?
Rotator, supraspinatus.
Yep, okay.
Shredded bicep tendon.
Yep, that's what happened on this
Yeah.
one.
I demanded the MRI, and he said,
Yeah.
oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
Your shoulder is exploded in there, so
Yeah.
we need to do surgery.
Well, see, that's the thing. I think a lot of climbers, you develop so much, you can't overcompensate with all
Yeah.
of the other muscles. So they
Yep.
did the same thing with both. And I passed for both.
Yep.
I think there needs to be, I don't even know what other test you could do, but there needs to be some other test specifically,
Yeah.
I think, overhead or climbers.
Yep.
Because you learn to use your shoulder in just so many different ranges of motion, and you end up learning to work with it.
Yep.
And our bodies are great for that because we do adapt very quickly to everything. But yeah, so passed it, and he was like, I was like, what, it still kind of hurts to sleep on it. Can we just, in the orthopedic
Let's
guy,
take a look in there.
yeah, I go, and well, he did an x-ray and my humerus was shoved up a little bit into my
Oh,
clavicle, and
yeah.
he's like, well, that doesn't look very normal. I was like, hey, Glowny, I should probably get an MRI. And he's like, knowing you, only because he knows me
Right.
so well, he's like, you're right, we should probably do an MRI. And sure enough, it was torn. And I was like,
Yep.
damn it.
Yeah, of course.
So
where did climbing come in? I'm sure after strength training, you were running,
Yeah.
then strength training, and then somewhere in there, climbing came in, which is probably the least, I don't even know how to say it. It's the avenue that strength trainers historically have probably been the least
oh yeah, for sure. That's it.
valued. So
It's funny you say that because I did an internship at CU Boulder with all of their athletics and
Right.
all of the strength coaches, and I was always in my notebook, strength book, I was always transferring everything to climbing. And I actually would always try and convince the other strength coaches to come to the gym. And they were like, you're so weird.
yeah,
No, why don't you just want to lift? Because I would lift, and after the 12 to 15 hour internship, I would still go climb.
go to the climbing gym.
Yep. Yeah. And that's actually why I realized I couldn't go to university and do that, because I was like, I can't. When will I go climbing?
Right.
Because I became obsessed with it. Climbing came into the picture actually right after running, because I kind of had that like identity shift, and I
Yep.
was like, am I a runner? Am I a trainer? And Galen, my boyfriend, he was like, hey, why don't you try this out? So it was him that really
Cool.
brought me into it. And he's like, you know what, you need to try something new. And I, again, like I said, I didn't really think it was a workout, so I would still kind of go run.
Yep.
But as being an athlete, I think most athletes that go into climbing, they progress pretty fast. And I was like, wait, if I can progress this fast, what if I actually trained?
Right.
So pretty quickly, I ended up training immediately, which I think a lot of climbers, they'll climb for a few years before they train.
Yep.
Within probably the first 3 to 4 months, I was immediately training for climbing.
When was this? Do you know roughly a year?
Let's see. So probably around 2014.
Okay. So were
Yeah.
you like taking what you had learned from strength training and bringing it
much.
over into climbing? Were you looking for climbing resources?
No,
How did that look for you?
Yeah, no, I didn't actually look up. I wasn't like how to train for climbing. I actually, the way I went about it was because I had already been a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, how we broke things down in training and how I had learned to do it from my mentor was more of you being a movement coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, so when I climb and I reach for this, you pull. So I was like, how can I switch that to an exercise? So, or, you know, how do I not get injured immediately? So I was like, okay, I need to do push-ups. I need to do pushing exercises. Obviously, trunk and core strength has a lot to do with climbing. So I was immediately trying to do that stuff. And I would actually just sit and watch people climb. And I was like, how? And I would like kind of take notes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the best ways to learn.
Yeah.
period.
And I would like transfer things to exercises. And I would look up actually other sports, like overhead athletes and swimming and just things that I could like. And that was probably happened a lot more in the internship. But in the very beginning, some of the stuff started kind of blossoming. I was like, okay, how can I, transfer a lot of these? But my biggest thing was not getting injured because I knew throughout running, I was like, what stops athletes is them getting injured.
Yep.
And a lot of things I think I did in the beginning was more rehab and PT stuff because I had already done a lot of shoulder PT.
Sure.
So I was like, everyone should be doing this. And when I would tell other people that, they're like, you're so weird. Why would you you don't need to train for climbing. That's what I heard a lot. They're like, you don't. And it was like Oregon State. So it was a small community of climbers. And they were like, Jess, why are you doing this? You just need to climb more. And I'm like, no, but you guys are going to get, and I'd see all these people with tape all over their hands and tape on their elbows. And I was like, well, why don't you do all these things so you don't need to have tape on everything?
Yeah, it's got this really terrible mix of being both an addiction and really hard on your body.
Mm-hmm. But I saw that in them because I was like, okay, I see all these other university athletes doing the same things to their body. Yeah. So I was like, I understand why they're doing it. But I was like, but why is there no trainers that do this? Why is there no coaches? Mm-hmm. And, around 2014, there wasn't really.
No, there wasn't much out there.
Yeah. So, and there were no women. The only woman that I found was Ava Lopez. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, someday I would love to meet her. And I ended up meeting her last year.
Yep.
And it was awesome. And she does a lot of research. And she became kind of my like idol.
Cool.
So that was... But yeah, I ended up looking up, I think, especially being in college, you end up looking a lot more research-based papers.
Sure.
But I think a lot of it's, and what I learned from her and school was trial and error.
Yeah. And that's what largely it is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Luckily, there are a lot more coaches, a lot more researchers, a lot more people digging into it now. So the trial and error is getting done by a lot more people.
Yeah.
And we're starting to figure some things out,
which
is nice.
Yeah. And there's no papers out there on climbing, really.
Not a ton.
The other day I looked
there are more and more, but
yeah.
not a ton.
Yeah. And it's been cool. Having access to the strength and conditioning, journal, there's nothing. So I'm like, that'd be cool to someday do maybe a paper on that.
Yeah.
But later.
Yeah. Well, you've got a lot of things going on right now, so maybe it's not the thing to be diving into right away.
Not right now.
When did you start working in a gym setting, like a climbing gym setting?
So
I assume it was a fairly new thing when you did.
It was very intimidating. Because I had trained people, but I didn't consider myself a climber.
Right.
I was like, I'm a runner trying to learn things about climbing, and but I'm still a trainer. So I had those like two identities still.
Right.
But of course, I had to actually do an internship to graduate. And I really actually wanted to go to Colorado Springs and work at the Olympic Training Center.
Right.
And so I applied to there, and my backup actually was a climbing gym. And I was like, worst case, I'll learn a lot about that. And I needed to graduate, and I'll just try a year later to get into either a university to work under strength coaches, or I'll go for the Olympic Training Center. And I didn't get in. I mean, I hadn't even graduated
Right,
technically.
right.
So they're like, who are you?
You're shooting high though. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And then I ended up working at a climbing gym, and I felt like I knew nothing, which I was like, well, this is perfect. I don't know anything, but they got me because they got me working for free.
Right.
And I was like, okay, and I trained people, but like I felt like I knew nothing, and here's all these like famous climbers in Boulder. I'm like, oh my God, I really don't know anything.
Yeah, you're in kind of a tough market.
Yeah, I was like little fish again.
An easily intimidating market.
Oh yeah, it was, and everyone climbs super hard, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll just kind of just stay under the radar and like just learn from other people.
Right.
So, I feel like I've learned a lot, but a few years later, I ended up doing the internship at CU, which then I was like, okay, yeah, I don't really want to work at a university because all they do is they are live and breathe the sports, and then they would watch football, and that's all they'd talk about. And I was like, well, did you guys see that climbing comp? And they're like, no, we don't even really know what climbing is. I'm like, but you're in Boulder. And they're like, nope, we still don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. When did you identify as a climber? As you keep talking in terms of identity.
Yeah,
so I'm curious
I would
when
say,
that switched over.
It probably switched over about a few years ago. Yeah. So it took a couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as I got more into it, I was like, yeah, okay, I like this. I'm a climber. And when I started training other people, I think that helped too. But yeah, maybe just like a few years ago.
So sometime after you identified as a climber, and I don't know the full story here. I'm kind of going in as blind as possible, just knowing the periphery of it. Sometime after identifying as a climber, you had traveled to climb a little bit, I think. So you were full on in the life, that so many people are interested in.
Totally. And I think that comes from just being lucky and put in the right place. Like my boyfriend was super obsessed with it. And, I think it was my first year of climbing, and we went to Bishop.
Right.
And I don't even think I really climbed. Like I hopped on it was too hard for me. I went there, and I think I mainly watched, and I tried like a couple zeros and ones, and I would go on runs. I was like, this is so beautiful. And I would go on trail runs.
Yep.
And I remember I did like a super high ball, the Stairway to Heaven, like it's a one.
Yep.
And I almost started crying like on it because I was so scared of heights. And honestly, I'm still scared of heights.
Sure. Lots of climbers are.
Yeah. But it was just funny because like I didn't even know like what an opportunity that was, not everyone gets to do that. And I just got like taken on this trip. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go. But I think going to places is what made me like really like it, because I was like, what, you get to like travel and go climbing and go to all these places. And I think that's when I really liked it. And then the training was just like, I already had been obsessed with training.
Sure.
That was just a plus.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, sometime in there, after kind of making that identity switch and being like, my name's Joss, I'm a climber.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, you went to the doctor, got a diagnosis. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I, honestly, all of this is just like so random. I ended up going to, just being in Boulder, everything is very close. So like you can go to the doctor, you can go to the climbing gym, you can, go on a run all in the same day.
Right.
And I feel like that's awesome that you can have all of those in one spot. So I was kind of just doing my normal routine. I probably like trained in the morning, like had an appointment, and this particular appointment, I went to the gynecologist, and she was just doing like a normal breast test. And I don't know, I just had the thought run into my head. My grandma actually died when she was 35. And I was like, hey, should I do anything about that? You know, 'cause she was doing the test, and she was like, wait, why have you never told me about this? I was like, I write this on all my paperwork all the time.
Right.
I was like, don't you guys check that? And she goes, excuse me for a moment. She leaves, comes back, and she says, hey, Joss, would you be willing to do a genetic test? And I go, how much does that cost?
Yeah, totally.
Being a cheap climber.
Yeah, that's the first question we all ask.
Right. And she goes, well, I'm referring you, so it's going to be free.
Insurance will cover it, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of people don't know that, specifically women, that it can be covered if you get a referral.
Yep.
And even if you get a referral, it may be like $100. Like insurance should cover most of it. Especially if you have a family history of cancer at all. And so she comes back, says, I'm referring you. It's free. I was like, okay, sure. Still have no idea what that means. So I get the referral. It's actually to Rocky Mountain Cancer Center. And still didn't really know what that meant. I was like, oh, the word cancer is in it.
Yeah, which is terrifying to
I still didn't really know.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I was so removed from it. My dad never talked about it. Actually,
just the word has such a connotation.
It definitely
just
does.
In our society.
Totally, yeah. And but I was like, I cannot, I'm not associated with that. So I was like,
right.
And I think being an athlete, you can do that. You can
yep.
compartmentalize and be like, that's not me right now.
So it still felt like just going through the motions to do this thing.
I'm just going to get this test. I don't even know what it is.
Yep.
Walking into the center though, that hit a little harder because you have people that are really sick.
Yeah.
And walking in, I was like, whoa. Okay, what does that really mean? I just walk in, I kind of see everyone there, there's people going through chemo. And I was like, okay, that's still not me. I'm not even going to think about it. And that's how I kind of stayed a little stronger. And then I got, I had to sit down with a genetic counselor, and she's like, okay, so this is what this is going to look like. She kind of laid it out and ended up saying, so we can do a blood test, but it's going to affect your life insurance. And I go, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And she said, if you get tested, then you will have a higher life insurance. It'll cost more. And I was
even if
just for getting the test.
Just for getting the test.
Just for getting the test. And I was like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. I'm trying to be preventative.
Yeah.
Why would it go up? And I would go, well, if I get cancer in 5-10 years, won't my insurance go up anyways? And she goes, yes. So I go, okay, well, so then why wouldn't I do this test? And she goes, okay, a lot of patients don't think like this.
Right.
But she's like, yes, this is totally logical the way that you're going about it. But most people are just like, I need time. Mm-hmm. And it's a much longer process. And I go, well, no, just do it now. Also because I am a lot of the things that I live by is preventative. So I kind of just transferred, and I was like, well, no, let's just do the test. She's like, are you sure? And I go, yeah, it's just a blood test. I'll deal with life insurance later. Right. So we do the blood test, and then I go, well, what are my chances? What does this mean? And she actually didn't think that I had that high because typically you have it straight from your parents. Mm-hmm. And it was my dad's mom.
Gotcha.
So, and people say, okay, they think it's from your mom typically.
Yeah.
But,
so it seemed like a low likelihood.
Yeah. She thought it was a low likelihood too. And she goes, well, do you want to make an appointment to hear the results? We can come talk about it. And I'm like, I don't really want to come back in here. I was like, I don't know if I could be this strong again. Yeah. It was very easy to go in the first time. And, not know what it was going to be like.
Sure.
But now knowing, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to see all of this again, kind of like out of sight. And she's like, okay, yeah, I'll just give you a call, with the results. I'm sure it's going to be fine. And I'm like, okay. And I was actually at a different appointment a few weeks later because it takes a little bit for the blood test. And I get a call and she's like, are you with anyone? I'm so sorry, Joslynn.
Wow,
I'm
that's
like,
a tough way to start a conversation.
I was like, wait, what? Why? What? I go, why are you sorry? And she's like, you have BRCA1. And I go, wait, excuse me, what does that mean? And she's like, you have a genetic mutation. You're at higher risk for cancer now. And I was like, not now, you just always have been. And I was like, wait, I don't understand. I still don't understand. I was like, and she's like, we're going to make an appointment. You're going to come in. We're going to talk about all of this. On the phone, I still didn't really know what it meant. I was like, okay, so I just have this thing that I've always had,
Right.
Still didn't really know what it meant.
I'm fine so far.
Yeah,
so.
I'm fine so far. I don't feel any different. Kind of like when people have labrum tears.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm fine. I don't feel anything.
Yep.
I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to push through it. So I kind of thought, well, maybe it's kind of the same thing. I'm just going to do nothing.
Yeah.
I just will wait till the next appointment. And of course, I get off the phone. I immediately look up all of this. I'm like, well, what is BRCA1? And then it's like, oh, wow. Okay. I have a really high risk. And then
do you know offhand what the risk goes to?
So it depends. Everyone's a little different.
Okay.
So like if you have someone that's closer, like if sometimes it's
like
people's,
if it's your mother versus...
Yep, mother versus... it also has a lot to do with age. For instance, because it was my dad's mother and it was when she was so young, typically people don't get it till they're, I want to say, late 40s, 50s,
and you're
maybe
talking
even 60s.
Cancer, not the gene mutation.
Oh,
when
yeah.
You, when
the
you say
mutation, you
the
have it
mutation
since you're
is
born.
just there.
Yeah, but actually getting maybe specifically breast cancer till, 50s, 60s, maybe even later. So that's why they don't even start mammograms. So testing for breast cancer specifically in women till they're in their probably 30, 40s.
Right.
And so I'm 27. When all this happened, I was 26. So they were like, whoa, you're way too young. Like, why would... You're freaking out for nothing. I wasn't actually freaking out at the time.
Right.
But after I was like, whoa, okay, what are my next steps? After I had found out the information. But yeah, for most people, I would just say go to a doctor and you can find out kind of your estimated risk from them.
Okay.
Mine jumped up to 80%.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were like, you're going to get it within the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, shit.
So I was like, yeah, I'm not getting chemo. I also immediately called one of my really good friends that she had gotten a test when she was 25. And I feel so lucky that she was in my life, or is in my life. She actually has a family history of it. And she was a client before, became a really good friend. And she actually found out she had stage 3 when she was 28.
Oh, man.
So when I immediately called her and told her I had the genetic mutation, we sat down, I think a day or two later, and she looked me in the eye like immediately and said, Joss, you're going to get preventative surgery. And I'm going to be there every step of the way. I'm going to go to whatever appointments you need. And I think a lot of people don't have that,
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, what do I need to do? And she's like, I would never wish anyone in my life to go through what I went through. Because she's like, if I have stage 3 or I've had stage 3, I'm fine now, but it's in my blood forever.
Right.
And she's like, I could get it again. And if I get it again, I could die.
Mm-hmm.
And she's mid-30s right now, and she has 2 kids. So she's like, no, like, I wish that I could have gotten a preventative surgery earlier on.
Yeah.
And she's a nurse.
Was this the first conversation you had about Actually having the preventative surgery? I'm sure the doctor said this is an option. But
Oh, yeah. I had an appointment after I had talked to her, and she actually came to my first appointment, and which was really nice for me because I didn't feel like I was alone.
Right.
And I'm sure there are tons of women out there that they have that information and feel alone, and immediately you feel like no one else will understand.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you can do. It's not like you can just be like, oh, I need to go on a diet.
Right.
Oh,
right.
I need to, just exercise more.
Yeah, it's not just making a lifestyle change.
No, yeah. And so...
it's kind of being forced into one.
Oh, yeah, you're definitely forced into one. And I just took the next steps. So I was like, okay, what do I need to do? And had appointment after appointment for months and months. And I had a lot of support from a lot of friends. And honestly, I didn't know or realize I had that big of a community.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see that. But yeah, you just kind of then end up going through the steps of what you need to. I have another climber friend. She has a BRCA2. And her mom died from it, and she's like, Joss, you're being so strong to go through with this. And because she dealt with it and it's so real and saw her mom go through this, she was like, it's hard for her to go through this.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think a lot of other people are like that, out there, that they're like, that's too scary. Like, especially if women want to have kids,
Right.
like, they can't breastfeed.
Yeah.
I'm also at high risk for ovarian. That one I'm trying to ignore a little bit right now.
Yeah. One thing at a time.
One thing at a time. That one's a little, I think, more intense. I won't have to deal with it till I'm mid-30s.
Yeah.
That's still not that far.
Yeah.
So.
And you said that early on when you were, I don't know if it was early on, but when you were thinking about the surgery, and you just mentioned that a lot of people just don't understand. And you said that you and your mom had to go back and forth about the surgery because she wasn't.
Yeah. So, my mom, a lot of mom-daughter relationships, sometimes they're super strong, sometimes they're not. In this case, we're really close. My mom had me when she was super young.
Yeah. And
I've kind of always just been super close with her, normal high school fights, but
for sure.
Always, I respect her opinion. And when I found out about this, she was the first person I called.
Right.
And I didn't think I would start bawling immediately, but I did. It's like, Mom, and I have this mutation, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And she's like, it's okay, very comforting. And I don't think she really knew what it meant either. She just immediately went into mom mode.
Yeah.
And she was like, we'll just see what the next steps are. Don't worry about it. There's nothing you can do right now. I'm like, okay, yes, there's nothing I can do right now. But as I went through the steps, I was like, okay, this needs to happen. Because the way that I think is very logical. And she was like, then when I decided I wanted to go through with getting a preventative prophylactic mastectomy, she was like, whoa. You need to back up. Why are you getting a surgery? You don't have anything. And I was like, Mom, I don't want to have anything, so I'm going to get this surgery.
Yeah.
But of course it's scary to have your daughter go through a pretty major surgery.
Totally, yeah.
And she was like, no, honey.
And there must be some level of denial there of nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Of course, she wants to think that. I want to think that. But I'm like, well, I don't want to go through anything.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just...
And you're a logical thinker.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, well, no, I'm going to obviously get this done. And so, yeah, she had a crazy story kind of happen before. And she actually had her roommate at the time try to commit suicide. And She was in her early 20s, going through a lot. My mom didn't actually know her that well. She took her in. And she actually was worried for her. There were a lot of like signs, but again, she had called me too and was like, "What should I do?" And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, mind your own business.
Yeah.
You're not her mom. Leave her alone." And so she did. And the night before she was about to leave to fly out to Colorado, because she lived in California or lives in California, she hears ambulance. And, this girl is like shaking on the ground, like almost eyes roll back. And there's all these people hovering over her and saying, ma'am, are you okay? And she tried, to take her own life. And my mom, of course, probably didn't get any sleep coming before and super stressed out about going to see her daughter go through this major surgery. And and we had lots of disagreements about it, and I wouldn't say fought about it, but we definitely disagreed on me getting the surgery. And
it's something you kind of have to feel strongly about.
Oh yeah,
one way or the other.
Totally, yeah. And
there's no, I don't know.
Yeah, and then she's like, it was like a flip of a switch. She changed her mind and was like, "Oh my gosh, my daughter is trying to save her own life, and here's this other young woman trying to take hers." So she just totally changed her opinion, and I think was at ease when she came and visited me, and was like very calm when she came. So that was, I sensed that for sure. I mean, I was drugged up, so I don't really know. But I definitely felt like she was totally calm when she came and visited right after the surgery. So
as a trainer, as someone who's been through PT, had injuries, that part of it, I'm sure you could file away and be logical about and just be like, "Oh, I need to do these things to get back to climbing."
For sure.
But
well, kind of. It was actually, that was probably one of the hardest things. Being a trainer, I always look at the steps.
Right.
And I researched so much stuff on women's prophylactic mastectomies, and there's really not that much out there. Really, I would say nothing. There's a lot of, hey, gain your range of motion back. Oh, great, you're good to go.
Right.
I actually ended up looking a lot of up on because I ended up choosing to get also reconstructive surgery, and I looked up bodybuilders.
Sure.
Because they will get breast reconstruction, being models and stuff. And I was like, well, you know what? That's probably the closest thing I'm going to get to, And so I looked up whether women went under, what the procedures they went through. And that's kind of how I separated things. But there are no steps right after getting this done. So that was probably the hardest. I was like, oh man, I'm not going to be able, I'm going to an unknown zone.
Right.
Like I don't know, like I know how to deal with shoulder surgery. There are steps you go through, but after, getting a mastectomy, I'm going to be on my own. I'm going to have to write my own, training style.
Is there much, during the surgery, damage to the pectoral muscle?
Yes. They cut your pecs.
Okay.
So I guess if I didn't choose to get reconstructive surgery, which honestly, I wasn't strong enough to do that. I was like, no, I still want breasts. Like, I'm still a woman. I feel like I would then have another identity shift.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about. Like, you're coming back into climbing after having lost your connection to this identity as a climber.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And also having to confront the idea of womanhood,
Yeah,
and I
sure.
think that makes it far more than doubly difficult. It's exponentially
it's
more.
And I also didn't want to identify as a cancer patient, because I was like, I don't have it, I'm not going to identify with it.
Right.
So I was like, I am getting this, and that's gonna be it. I'm gonna walk away from it. But yeah, I mean, when they do the surgery, they remove all of your breast tissue, your mammary glands, so you cannot breastfeed if you decide to have children.
Right.
And that's probably one of the other biggest things. They immediately start talking about children and what do you want? And I was like, I don't want to talk about that right now.
Right.
So I think that's another thing. A lot of women are like, whoa, you already made this quick decision. But everyone's different in what they choose. But yeah, I was like, preventative. That's all I kept thinking of. And I just wanted to prove to myself that I could also, train through it after.
Yeah.
It's like I know I've gone through so many other things. I can do this. It was nothing like I thought it would be.
Yeah. In what way?
I think like I obviously dove into a million forums and blogs and tried to research other people's processes, and it's so different for everyone. That was the biggest thing that I had, and I was like, well, I'm going to come out of this learning and stronger, and I actually knew, because it was a genetic mutation, that my sister might have it. And I ended up calling her and asked her to get a test done, and she was like, why would I do that? And I'm like, I had to explain to her what her risks were, and she ended up following through, getting a test, and she's 6 years younger than me, and she actually just got the surgery done.
Oh, wow.
So part of me was like, I'm doing this for her too.
Yeah.
For any other friend, any other family member, I want to be able to honestly show them the steps. And it was the cutest thing. I mean, I called her before surgery and I was like, are you nervous? She's like, obviously, yes. Are you scared? Yes. And overall, how are you feeling? She goes, I know I'm going to be fine because you were strong.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm going to be fine because you did it. And I was like, wow, she's so much more positive than I was.
Well, she had you.
Yeah, to have someone. But I also had a friend, that had gone through it. But honestly, I asked so many questions of her, and she was like, I don't really remember. She was like, I don't remember, because she had so many bad things happen. Like, she got infections, which is also common.
Right.
I think she had like 14 surgeries. Yeah. So it was not uncommon to have things go wrong with getting this type of surgery. I think, that was maybe 10 years ago for her. So the surgeries are getting so much better.
Right.
And honestly, when I had meeting after meeting, or, when I met with the plastic surgeon even, he was like, you'll come out of this because it's preventative, looking like you just got a boob job.
Right.
I was like,
right.
Oh, okay. I never thought, like, that's not me, like, at all. I never thought that I would be getting something like that. And in a way, I had this fight with myself that I was like, am I being selfish?
Right.
Getting this type of thing done. Should I just be strong and not get this done?
Right.
Like, I don't like anything fake or, and I ended up,
ultimately, how did you reconcile that?
Well, the biggest thing too, and it was a process even within the last few months. I was, I definitely judged people if they got just like boob jobs,
Yeah.
And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I judging people? And I had this talk with so many other women, and I'm like, everyone gets things done to make themselves feel good, and it's okay, And I was like, I need to accept that I'm going to get the reconstruction to feel fine, to feel normal, to feel like myself. And if people get any type of reconstructive surgery, I'm like, that's okay. I need to not judge. Other people need to not judge people. So, and a lot of questions, of course, mainly from males. It was, are you going bigger? Are you, doing
Of
this?
course.
It's like, no, I'm an athlete. I'm not doing this for any of that. But I found myself saying, I am not doing this for the looks or anything. And I was like, wow, that's super also judgy.
Yeah.
To say it in that way.
I think we all have.
So
we have to draw our own line of where
for sure, but
where we're comfortable and where we're not, and everyone's line is going to be different, and we just have to remember that that's fine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But in the end, I'm like, wow, it was a good humbling moment for myself, because I was like, wow, I need to sit back and realize I was doing that too.
Yeah. So since you've talked a lot about identity through all of this, how's your identity changed?
That's a good question. I feel like I'm still trying to figure that out. I definitely have switched a little bit into, okay, I'm a provider. Like, I'm a preventative. That's what
I've not heard that word before, but I like it.
Provider. I found it actually, and through doing all the kind of research, a lot of younger women are calling them that because they do the preventative surgery, and they could have then gotten cancer. And so they're like, no, we are doing it and we're providers, which is kind of cool. And it then, I think, creates a little community for other women. I actually had the PT, the breast PTs that helped me after surgery. They asked me to help other women because they're like, we have not had a trainer, strength coach go through this that knows what it feels like.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's totally, I had never found myself being, in this type of realm. And I'm still trying to decide if I want to do that. Yeah. But
what's the reluctance? Why do you think maybe you don't?
Honestly, because I'm like, man, will I always think of it? Do I want to think of it anymore?
Yeah.
Do I want to step away from it? But it is still,
or you could just go on and go back to normal, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think I'm probably still in a transition state of figuring out what I want to do. But definitely, I've had a lot of women message me because of social media being so easy for you to interact with other people. And a lot of women have been like, wow, thank you so much for showing me what you were able to do week after week. And I'm like, okay, that feels really good too.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting the story out there.
Yeah.
And you're definitely putting up a strong I don't want to say facade because I don't think it's fake. I don't think it's a facade, but you're showing your strength in your social media. So whether you like it or not, you're traveling down that path of helping
it's kind of
other
happening
people.
anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I'll definitely help out, but whether or not, I guess I turn it into my job.
Your
we'll
identity.
See. Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned before that you were making a documentary about it all.
Yes, we are.
Is that something we can even talk a little about? Or?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it'll be a little bit.
Sure.
I definitely am still. Let's see. I don't even know what week I'm on.
But all that tells me is
healing.
that you're totally willing to put the story out there. The story is going to inspire people.
Yeah.
So
I was trying to figure out what it was called, and one of my friends is a cinematographer, and she's like, this is called a passion project. I was like, okay, because none of us are getting paid to do it.
Right.
We just kind of, right now, I guess what I mainly want to do is inform other women.
Yep.
I want other people to reach out and ask questions. I want other people to know there are people like them. If I could find more about it, more people around my age group, that would have been amazing. There are a lot of groups out there, and there's a lot of stuff out on social media, but not as active. Like people aren't as active. Like
and probably tough to find if you're not already involved. I mean, I find that with a lot of communities. There might be this great thriving community, but if you don't have the if you don't know someone already, it's tough to find.
Yeah, and I think they call themselves breasties too. And I just haven't found as many women that are, whether they're climbers or runners or just as active. The things that I've read, whether it's been a blog or people opening up, they're like, I ran a 5K. And then they're like psyched about that. Not to like put anyone down, but I'm like, wait, all I want to do is train super hard.
Right. You're looking for more serious athletes who've gone through it. And
I even messaged some random lady, and she looked like she was kind of a trainer. She was older, probably in her mid-40s. And I was like, hey, like, what is it going to be like after? What are the steps, that I'm going to take? Just kind of give me, and this was before surgery, maybe even a week before. I was like, what can I expect? And she was like, just, I sent her this long email, and I'm happy she responded, but her response was short and to have patience. I was like, what? No, that's
I don't need patience.
Hear.
I need steps.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of been, I've been that person for my sister. She's kind of been like, calling me. I think I've talked to her almost every day. And she's like, is this normal? When you had the drains, so you get drains in.
Yeah.
Did it feel like it was stinging? And I'm like, does it feel like serrated knives are cutting into your side? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, yep, that's normal.
Yeah.
So, and she's like, there's so much pressure in my chest right now. Is that normal? Yes, that is. And she'll just have all of these, things that she's been asking. And I'm like, yeah, all of these things are very normal. And I think the biggest thing was when I looked stuff up, I just wanted to read steps. I actually, and I don't want this to sound bad, I didn't want the emotional stuff.
Right.
A lot of women,
Sure.
They'll write these things and they're like, I felt this and I felt sad about this. And I was like, I just like skim through it, and I just wanted to know, where is the exercise part?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't really talk about that. It was more all of the emotions they were going through. And I didn't care about that as much. I was like, I just want to see what I need. But that's, every person's different.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, is this going to be something that you're working through and then putting out there? Like through the documentary, these are the steps that I took. This is why I took them. Here's how I reacted to it.
Yeah, I think
all of that.
We've kind of talked about, we've had some meetings about it, and I think we'll mainly talk about how you can still be who you want to be and strong and still function in the exact same way that you were functioning before, even going through something like what I did. And they may even make it a series with other women that have gone through other crazy, not as common things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think having answers to those questions, even if most of the world operates on this emotional level that they want all those things, having the answers to the questions is going to become increasingly more important, because there are more and more young women athletes
and I think,
who are looking into this. And I think those resources are important and needed.
Yeah. I've had a lot of climbers actually be like, well, wait, I have a history of it. I'm like, get tested.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hope that anyone who I've kind of touched or reached out to, or has even just seen stuff, like I hope that they do go through with it, because I don't know, there's so much awareness out there. I put that in quotes because, I would say even like, you see the pink ribbon, you see all of that stuff, but do people actually even know what this is?
Right.
I don't even know within the next 5-10 years if breast cancer or, a lot of other cancers will even be cured. I think
Sure.
that
We
the
can't
way,
know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that what will happen is you can inform as many people as possible and they can be preventative about it. And I think that you can, like a lot of other diseases, you will prevent it with doing something about it beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then kind of nipping it before you even happen.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
I think, like it or not, your trepidation with the idea of, I don't know if I want that to be my identity,
Right.
is helping other women get through this. It's what you're doing, whether you want to
Yeah, that's true.
say it out loud or not. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really admirable. And I'm going to bother you for some resources just to
Yeah,
put
definitely.
in the show notes of this if people are looking. And certainly whenever the documentary is done, I'd love to share it out
Yeah.
there as much as I can. So,
Yeah, I think my biggest thing right now is informing other people, whether, men listening, talk to their
yeah, absolutely.
wives,
Have
sisters.
these conversations.
Yeah.
You know, I've been going through this series of tough conversations on the podcast lately.
Yeah.
And sort of purposely putting myself in these nervous positions
No, that's
where
good.
having these tough conversations is a little scary to me, and things I don't know anything about,
Yeah.
So I think it's important to do that. And this is one of those areas where men could certainly be, and
Oh,
most
yeah.
of my listeners are men. So,
that's the thing. I mean, I think, right? Like I got it from my dad.
right.
He carried the genetic mutation and he gave it to his 2 daughters.
Right.
So I don't think that only women should know about this.
Can men be tested for the
for
mutation?
sure. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, like I think if anyone has a family history of cancer,
Yeah.
they should be tested because if they have daughters,
Yeah.
or their sons could carry the mutation on.
Right.
And that is how I think people can prevent it, by even just getting the test done. Because it still puts them at a higher risk. So
You just totally shifted my entire thinking about this conversation.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I want to inform people, not just women, just
Yeah.
everyone,
Yeah.
I mean, my sister, she's gay, and she and her girlfriend is the one who's taking care of her. And,
Right.
a lot of people would be like, well, maybe she's not going to have kids or whatever. It doesn't matter, she's going to get it done, and now she's free,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter who you are. Just anyone should, I think, get tested. So
Yeah. As scary as it might be, I think it's an important thing.
Information is power.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably my biggest thing right now, is just let people know.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Well, I appreciate you letting me know.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sitting down and talking and taking time out of the craziness here that you're about to walk back into. But yeah, that last 3 minutes just totally shifted the way I'm thinking. So I appreciate that more than anything, because
Good.
what this all comes down to is this podcast is selfish for me because I want to learn things.
You want to learn things. Well, by you learning, you're informing other people. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Joss. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'm not a superstitious person. I like to think I'm fairly logical. And this episode should have been out 2 or 3 days ago. Part of the reason it wasn't is because I was getting really, really frustrated by this strange audio interference that I couldn't get rid of. Nothing I tried. I couldn't isolate the frequency. I just couldn't get it out of there. That interference starts at the exact moment that Joss is telling us what the doctor told her, the diagnosis. You have BRCA1. You can hear it a little bit if you listen to the intro again. the quote from Joss, and I left it in entirely in the main conversation. I just couldn't get it out of there without getting rid of Joss's voice. And like I said, not a superstitious person, but take that for what you will. I left you in the intro with the word courage. And then I purposely left in all of the talking about Joss's athletic and training history because I really wanted you to understand where her identity was formed and how jarring it must be to face having your identity on multiple levels stripped away. But in the face of that, Joss's demeanor is one of steady courage. And in her emails, the signature includes a quote from Tanzanian marathoner Juma Ikonga that reads, "The will to win means nothing if you haven't the will to prepare." And I think Joss's athletic career, the injuries, the setbacks, the rebounds, obviously prepared her well for this ordeal. And despite her reticence to let this be a part of her new identity, which is pretty much why I left it in the audio, that interference, I left it there in the diagnosis because I think it is part of her identity at this point. And despite her reticence to let it be a part, she's told me that she's working on strength programming for women who are going through the same thing, and she's going to keep adding to her blog to inform everyone about BRCA1 and BRCA in general. If you want to check that out, it's bodyenroute.com, bodyenroute.com. I've also posted links to the resources that Joss suggests right there in the show notes on your Pocket Supercomputer. You can also find those on our website. You can Google Joslynn Corredor and Power Company Climbing, and you'll find it there. Joss, thank you. I just put it out into the world, so now you have to get this strength programming together, holding you accountable, even though I know I don't need to, and you're going to do it anyway. Thank you a ton for sitting down with me and having this conversation with me. Your courage is inspiring, to say the least, to me, and I think to a lot of our listeners. So thank you. You guys know where to find us, powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find us on the Facebook. You can find us on the Instagrams. You can search for us on the Twitters, but you will not find us there because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power. 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 This time to build. 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 This time to build.